Welcome to the Armada podcast with your host, Kalorn.
I have never in my life seen Fox as like completely mentally blasted at the end of day one.
Fox Omega.
He created a wall, I jumped over them and attacked Axe from the rear, from his axe hole.
And Juliet Whiskey.
Gentlemen, remember this is a Star Wars Armada podcast, not late night.
And now, the Armada podcast.
And good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and good night. Hello, all you admirals out there. It is I, Juliet Whiskey, here with Kalorn, Fox Omega, and our guest for the night, Frizzmmm. You had to add a few extra ums in there just for him. Anyways, tonight's main topics are going to be the interview with Frizzmmm, tournament logistics, and LSO. Now, the past week, LSO just happened. Gentlemen, how are y'all?
Yeah.
How have y'all been?
I thought this was like KCNXO or something like that, and this was the late night show, or...
It definitely had that vibe, yeah.
With some soft jazz.
I could tell by the half-empty bottle of Cavassier that our evening has come to an end.
Look, I'm just trying to give the listeners something nice to listen to.
It took us all 60 seconds to get off topic. That's okay.
But anyway,
we lasted a whole minute.
I didn't get to go. So how are you guys? How did everything go? Just a light overview because we're gonna go a deep dive into it later.
Man, I'm still recovering. I feel like that was quite the weekend. Like, it was heavy.
Yeah. From my perspective, it was hot and heavy for 3 days, and I'm just like Fox. I'm still recovering. I
was a real idiot and scheduled my final ITC match for the day after I got back from LSO. Horrible decision. Don't ever do that, friends.
It also doesn't help that Kalorn had the restaurant we were at pour an abnormally large shot of tequila the night before.
Oh, that was so good.
It was good in the moment.
What did you say, Frizzmmm, when I came up to you and said, come over here, you're going to drink something?
And I said, wait, yes, I will always come for suspicious liquids.
I think I told you you're going to drink whatever I got you.
Yeah. Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
No, we're not going to unpack that. Let's not unpack that.
That's a standalone soundbite.
But all right, from here, I'm going to hand it over to the interviewer and interviewee, Fox Omega and Frizzmmm.
All right, Frizz, I got some rapid fire questions for you. All right. So you are a part of the Houston meta. You've been playing how long now?
My first game was in March of 2018. A couple of guys that I know at church said, "Hey, you like Star Wars?" I said, "Yeah." And they're like, "Okay, we got a tabletop game to play." So since then, basically.
That's the best way to get in right there. You already have some solid friends in the game. So you already have people you can play with, not just awkwardly starting.
Yeah, exactly.
What would you say, so playing now for 4 years, what would you say your play style has developed as?
First, my play style was established as running 3 ISDs and trying to be a brawler. And lately, I have transitioned into niche meme builds that I don't see out there. So I'm running double Starhawk at the moment and running triple salvo prickly pear sort of thing. It's still kind of brawler, but I'm actually attempting to not engage and just be a weird, like, dangerous target.
So, quick question for the rookies, for the new guys, and for the noobs. What do you mean by a brawler? Like, can you elaborate a little bit more on what you mean by that playstyle?
Certainly. So, brawler, as it's introduced to me and as I understand it and play it, means that I play larger ship that attempts to bully its way around the board with its increased shields and HP, and also usually more offensive damage output. So it's trying to throw a lot of dice, and it's just trying to be a bullet sponge.
One of these tournaments, you and I are going to not get matched up, Frizzmmm.
Well, I don't mind any opponent that I play. I really enjoy playing against the best. I have zero aspirations myself of being the best, but I find that I enjoy the games more when it's just not me steamrolling somebody.
You played last LSO. You played a fleet you called the Junk Drawer that had a Raider,
Yes,
and a Gladiator, and an ISD, and an Onager, and you executed. I still vividly remember this. This is a year ago. You executed one of the greatest Raider moves I've ever seen anybody execute.
Yeah.
Like you.
Is this before or after that you were staring at Karnak's butt?
Moments before.
This is moments before. Yeah, this is the lead up to that moment. Yeah, it is a very powerful moment. Yeah.
You heard it here on the podcast. So here first, folks.
It was like
beautiful stumble. I got you, Kalorn. You heard it here on the podcast first, staring at butts.
There you go. No, everybody knows that Matt stared at Karnak's butt. What we didn't know is how we got there. So I got to hear about this move from the Raider, Frizzmmm.
Yes, so the Raider at speed 4 jumped in and slotted right in front of my own, I believe, ISD, and managed to double arc both Matt's demo and your ISD, right?
Yep,
If
that's
I
right.
remember correctly.
You wedged between both of them. Yep. While avoiding my front arc on my ISD, and you had a perfect exit vector the next activation if it lived. Like it was a brilliant, like if just out of nowhere you're like, you know what, I'm going speed 4, and you slotted, and it was like a jigsaw puzzle, like where the piece just kind of fit right in there. And
exactly, because I rubbed right up against my own ISD. And I was like, I think this will fit, and I placed it down, and it worked out right.
Yeah, it was good.
I got you, Juliet.
Gentlemen, remember, this is a Star Wars Armada podcast, not late night with
all right.
You get where I'm going with this.
Okay, well then we'll move to the next question. If you could give advice to you starting the game, what would it be?
Trust your instincts. When I started the game, I had a method of sticking with a build and incrementally changing it. And I think that that's the greatest piece of advice I could give myself, is trust that instinct. It's too easy to build something and then completely abandon it because you got stomped without analyzing what worked, what didn't, and then making small changes.
Man, that's like the best segue to like the second half of this podcast.
Well, there you go. You need to catalog that timestamp?
Something like that. So I'm going to take over for Fox here for a little bit because he's having some connection issues. So, Frizzmmm, you were the TO for LSO. You kind of stepped in because last year, in 2021, Karnak flew down and ran this tournament for Frontline Gaming, and then Karnak said he wasn't going to be able to come down this year, and you kind of stepped up into that role. Tell us like how you got into that role with FLG, how you volunteered, what was it like working with FLG, and then what were the logistics for running a 2-day tournament like this?
Okay, well, I'd like to say that there was a magical moment, but I just straight up emailed Kicker and said, I heard that there's no TO for LSO, and I said, I volunteer to do this. My point has always been promoting the community, and if this tournament didn't happen, I know that it was going to be a large segment of the community that just was disappointed. As far as logistics for a 2-day tournament, luckily I had experience running Warzone, which was a 2-day tournament. So I actually just directly patterned the tournament LSO the same way. right down to calling my casuals filthy casuals. And let's see, as far as overall logistics go, it was just on day 2 trying to make sure that both the different tournaments, both the casual and the top 8, had different start times and different play times. So that way they didn't both end at the same time and nobody's sitting around just waiting for a pairing or something like that.
Hey, that's super interesting, actually, as far as like how to organize like a simultaneous event like you did on day 2. What other, like, were there ever any instances where you had issues like judging or making calls, or what did like the kind of offsetting the start times kind of address that? Because like a lot of controversial calls happen like around the same time in the game, like around round 3 or round 4. Did offsetting the rounds by that amount of time kind of help mitigate the simultaneous calls that needed to happen?
From outward appearances, yes. That was actually pretty clutch. Where right as the casual tables were getting into their round 3, their round 4, those defining rounds that really decide who's going to win it, they're having those, oh, I need a measurement check because this is a crucial shot. And then about 10 minutes later, my top tables were giving me a call. Oh yeah, I need a range check on this. And on the top tables, I really didn't have to do rules. I just had to do measurements. On my lower tables, I had to clarify a couple rules here and there.
Didn't help that you were like literally down at the other end of the hall when we needed it half the time.
Yeah, the layout was very, very, and this is just me being brutally honest. It was terrible. Yeah, there were moments where, I'm fat. I'm not going to lie to anybody. I decided I'm going to try running, and then I took a couple of steps, and I'm like, I'm just going to walk fast.
I'm going to try running. Step. I'm going to try walking, and we're going to see how that goes. Yeah, exactly. I totally get that. Well, cool. On that note, so we had an incident in one of the early rounds of the top 8 where suboptimal play was potentially intentionally executed without the opponent's consent.
Yes.
What are some ways a TO can mitigate someone trying to alter outcomes in non-obvious ways? Because that was a lot of the difficulty of the situation was the opponent didn't, they did their due diligence in asking, and it wasn't entirely clear what was happening. And as a player, what are things that we need to do to make sure that top competition maintains integrity,
Yeah, I actually like your word integrity, because that's actually codified in the TO decision-making process. So I will touch on that in just a sec. So to answer your question directly, what are some of the ways the TO can mitigate someone trying to alter that? The biggest and best way that will now for sure be in my pregame spiel is to emphasize the importance of stepping up and playing your best. I feel that if you're on the top tables, there are plenty of people underneath you that would love to have that position, and they'll take it from you if you just gave it to them. So you should honor them by playing your best. So that's the sort of thing that will be added to my pregame speech that I give. Most of the time, I'm reminding people that it's a game, and at the end of the day, you should be playing it to have fun. And I completely missed the chance and the opportunity to tell the top tables that this is also a tournament and you should try your hardest.
No, and that's an important element to this, and it's something you and I talked about, and in the lead up to this episode is, post pandemic, we all of our communities in Texas have been primarily and intently focused on developing the community and building the community and getting a player
Mm-hmm.
base back, because some people left, like they were already leaving before the pandemic started, but
Yeah.
but then Wave 9 and Wave 10 released, and there were some palpable excitement in the game. And so a lot of the Texas series itself is designed around encouraging the community. And so a lot of these
Yeah.
tournaments have had that vibe that you're trying to describe. Like, we're playing a game, we're building a community, we're
Mm-hmm.
that's what we're trying to do. But we're reaching a moment in our competitive meta in Texas where we are getting some dang good players and some
Yeah,
really
we
high
are.
level competition.
Yep.
And it seemed, in the moment, it seemed like the quote unquote intentional suboptimal play was really, if you look at it from a community building perspective, like, I totally understand where that player comes from. Like, oh, I'm going to lose, I might as well make this experience as great for my opponent as possible, right? Or
Yes.
as inviting it as possible. When in reality, what they're doing, I like the way you phrase that there are players below you that would love the opportunity to compete at the level for the sake of competing, and are totally
Yes.
and want to be a part of the community in that way. It's a hard transition we're going through right now, I feel like.
Yes.
Juliet, what do you got?
Eh, So just to jump on, because I am the new guy coming in, and I don't speak for everybody. I don't speak for every new guy coming in, but making sure tournaments, actual ranked tournaments, that is the cream of the crop. That's the top tier. That's what it should be. There should be a clearly defined line between a casual, hey, okay, we're just playing yada 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 yada, a casual tournament, and an actual gloves off tourney. And if that line is not clearly defined, you're going to end up losing more players or diluting tournaments to a point where there's almost no point in having it. So yeah, definitely make sure that line is clearly defined and reinforce that, hey, come out and play your best.
Yes.
I think one thing that happened as well is that we have some people who are relatively new to the idea of what a premier level event is. And, Frizzmmm, when he was giving his spiel at the start of day one, and I think he said it at day two, I don't remember, but he said, remember, this is a premier level event
Mm-hmm.
per the tournament rules. And I knew what that meant because I have spent time doing tournaments and I've read those tournament rules. I know what it says in the premier level tournament events rules. What I think that we may have run aground of is that not everybody knew what you meant by that particular statement.
That is very true. And that, to answer the second, well, not the second part, but the second part of Fox's question is, what can you as a player do to help? I think he asked his opponent, "Are you sure?" The only other thing that could have been done was to call me over in that moment. But I can be honest with y'all and say that I likely would have just given him the same pep talk that I gave to him after he handed his card in, and remind him, hey, you're playing in a tournament at a top table. You need to play your heart. So, but other than that, I don't feel that personally, as a TO, it should be the responsibility of a player to retard their game in any way for any reason. And to call a TO over is not retarding the game, but it is putting an onus on that player. So I think it's more in line with the TO to step up and walk a little faster, see more tables, or visit tables more often to catch that in the moment. And then I'm going to go ahead and cheat, and I sent messages to both Fox and Kellorn today, as well as the affected player. I want to just basically read it almost verbatim. My response moving forward is to hope that if I don't witness it, that the opposing player calls the judge. Then I can assess the situation in the sense of understanding of what the suboptimal play was. And then, if possible, rewind the event if it's caught soon enough. That's part of the thing that's set up in the structure of tournaments, is to rewind up to 5 minutes and basically reset the pieces before the bad suboptimal play was done. And then, kind of coach them, say, try a little harder. And other than that, it's also proceeding with what's called a hard warning. In tournament structure, you're kind of given a number of demerits before you're instantly disqualified. And the hard warning plus any other disruption basically would cause a DQ, so they would be on their last leg. But ultimately, like I said, I wanted to talk about the integrity of the tournament. That's what this did. That's what this action actually hurt, was the integrity of the tournament. And Fox is right. We're so focused on community building. We need to reassess and refocus now on pushing forward with premier level events, and what that looks like will be telling players what actually is involved in that. Ooh, another hand.
So you don't have to point out the hands. We're not in the office. We're not at a desk, people. Anyways, so one of the big things that for me has just been difficult, and that's just because I'm a little thick-headed. Where do I find the official, like, hey, these are the standards? And we will post a link of wherever the next statement says it is, so that everybody else can find them as well. Because as a new player, it is important to have those reference guides and those reference materials to go, okay, I know what the heck I'm walking into.
Right. So the best place right now, the AMG forums has a link to the tournament regulations, and that's the ones the average player needs to be concerned with. FFG, Fantasy Flight Games, in 2019 put out a publication for TOs to help their decision-making process. You as a player, and any given player, shouldn't have to read that, but it's also good to read just so you know where the TO is going to be drawing the line, essentially. And that one is scattered to the wind. It's actually kind of hard to find in reality. I can post a link in the Discord and let everybody view it. But like I said, the AMG forums actually has a good link to the current rules reference guide and the tournament regulations. That's where I would point players at.
Frizz, that's about all the questions I got for you. You as the TO, you witnessed all these games. We're going to start talking about LSO proper.
Yes.
So this is the meat and potatoes of the episode. So I guess let's buckle up, because we got 2 days worth of stuff to talk about. Kind of wild. Oof. So yeah. So first off, just the overall is the first thing we want to talk about. So player count. We originally had, Frizz, how many players did we originally have?
We had 25 original, 25 plus half. 25 players who officially signed up to do this. And I say half because one player sold his ticket to a new player. So 26 in reality.
Got it. And then we ended up having 22 on day one.
Yes.
Right? Okay. You sent me a list of all the factions represented. And so I'm gonna lay those out, and then we're gonna have a quick powwow talking about potentially what this means going forward. The faction spread, we had 8 Imperials, we had 9 Rebels, 3 Separatists, and 2 Galactic Republic. I feel like this ratio is almost the standard right now at a lot of tournaments. Am I off base? Do you guys think that's right?
What I've seen represented.
It feels similar to what we had at TXO, as I recall, Frizzmmm.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. In the Texas meta, that's almost bang on. There's a lot of Imperial, a lot of Rebels. There's a few Separatists, and few and far between Republic.
Yeah, that's sad. I feel like I've been harping on this a lot, but I feel like these newer factions, I feel like this is just people are. I don't know. I don't ascribe to the idea that Imperials and Rebels are just innately better. I just feel like people are much more comfortable right now playing those factions, and there's a lot of risk involved in bringing a faction that you haven't really like invested a lot of time in, you know.
I also think that the GAR in particular is more difficult to play, particularly in a tournament setting, given the way that you have to generally share tokens and move tokens around and have certain activation orders or things don't work in a way that some of these other factions, you can either get around it or you can build your lists in such a way that it's relatively simple.
Bro, my Tarkin token list. Oh my god. Like, cool, casual play. Yeah, it's fun. Cool. I get to do a bunch of extra stuff. But in an actual full-blown tournament, by the third game, I am exhausted mentally. I have nothing left. I am gassed.
Dude, you have not you would not believe how crazy exhausted I saw Fox at this tournament. And he's about to talk about it, I guarantee it. But like I have never in my life seen Fox as like completely mentally blasted at the end of day one.
So here's the deal. So I've flown Separatist heavy squads maybe 3 times going into this tournament. Like full-blown competitively, like want to get it done. I've done a lot of experimenting and playing on Vassal with some players and practicing, but not really in any capacity where literally every little thing relied on, like me moving on to day 2 relied on me making sure every single movement. So I predicted, and I've been saying for a while that day 2, game 2 is where you really start to feel the complexity and the weight of your list. And oh my God, we'll get to it. But the fleet that I played day 2, game 2 was a fleet that was basically born of my own invention. And I saw firsthand the horrors that I've brought out in Separatist list building. So it was awful. It was absolutely awful.
Hey, how long until we can go to lunch, Fox?
Yeah. Oh, I got so angry. Well, okay, let's not talk. Well, I guess we could go ahead and tell that story. But in the very first game, I'm up against Plo Koon, and I'm about to lose my Recusant, and like dice are rolling, and it's near the end of the round, and time is almost up, and Kellorn is just sitting there in a chair, and he's looking at his watch or his phone or whatever, and he just looks at me and goes, Hey, Fox, when are you going to be done? I'm hungry. I'm ready to go to lunch. And I'm like, bro, I didn't even say anything. I just looked at you, and you,
I did a 180 and got out of there. It was great.
You just backed away like, oh no, I did something. I said something I shouldn't have.
The best part is that Alan did it to you day 2.
On game 1 of both days. It was awful. I was like, man, is this a punk? Like, yeah, the second the game's over, Alan was like, hey, what's the score? And I'm like, oh, you better walk away right now.
So that just makes me feel a little bit better because, so newbie thing, at the tournaments, you may be last. But now that really reinforces that with GAR and CIS. Yeah, there's a lot going on, so it's going to take a minute to get to the end. So don't, to the noobs, don't panic. Play, relax, woosah your way through it.
Yeah, to really drive that point home, my own research has led me to say that the average Imperial Rebel player will get to turn 5 and 6 by the end of time, and the average CIS player will get to turn 4, while the average GAR player will get to turn 3.
That's really interesting. That's probably about right. Okay, so moving on. Kellorn, you are first up. We're going to go over your list and just briefly describe your day 1 matchups. All right.
So I was dumb, guys. I made a really stupid decision because I could not decide what I wanted to bring to this tournament. I woke up at 2:00 in the morning, the day of the tournament, and pulled out my phone off the charger and said, I'm going to make a change to my list. And that was that change list is what I ended up playing. I had practiced it 3 or 4 times on TTS beforehand. And literally day one was learning how my list worked, and doing that at a tournament is a really bad idea. So don't do that, guys. Make sure that you practice your games or your lists before you go to the tournament.
So what was the list? Like, I got to know, because unfortunately I didn't get to go. But what? Give me the deets. Give me the deets.
So I was flying an Agate Liberty, and the Agate is every round I took an evade with Agate. So that gives my Liberty 2 braces, a redirect, and an evade. I had Whale Explicics to get a token back if I had to use Krista. I had gunnery teams. I had SW7s. I had for the ion cannon, so that I could basically ignore my blues, whatever they, and they just what they were, and I could use the accuracies or not use them. And then I had link turbo laser towers and spinal lasers on there as well to give myself another 4 reds and 4 blues out the front. In addition to that, I just had a pretty standard TRC 90 with Janus Light. I had 2 GR75s, one with Leia and Comsnet, the other with Torin Far and munitions resupply. And then for squads, I had a very similar squad ball to the Starhawk list that I was playing, which included Lando, Dash, Shara, 3 YT-2400s, a 1 VCX, and a Z95, which we'll get to it in a little bit, but the Z95 was very clearly the hero of the engagement. Just ask Fox. In terms of day one rounds, my first round I played against Ozzel, and it was literally he had 7 ships. He had a Gladiator, 3 Architans, and 3 Raiders. All of the ships had 1 upgrade on them. Brian was a very cool guy and came within 1 damage of killing my Liberty. It's literally the only time that my Liberty was ever really in danger on either day. I was literally 1 damage away from getting tabled. It was absolutely terrifying and really kind of opened my eyes to what Ozzel can do to you. Also, like, it goes back to what I was saying before, is I did not have enough experience with my list to know how I wanted to counter Ozzel. And that really made a big difference as well. The second game that I played was, what was it? Frizzmmm, who did I play second round? I can't remember. Oh, yeah, it was Brandon. So it was the first of 3 Mahdi Onager lists that I played. So Brandon had an Onager, and then he had Mahdi on a Venator. His Venator was all tricked out to throw a lot of black dice out the front. I ended up as second player, but I kind of danced around his Venator and was never in close range of his blacks, and kind of just went around him, killed the Venator, and ended up with a 7-4 with a lot of work. And then in my last round, I played another Mahdi list, Mahdi Kuat this time, from Jason Girth, and I actually ended up playing him again on day 2. So the first round, or the first time I played him on day 1, I chose infested field, I chose his infested fields because he outbid me, and I kind of like just went around and killed his squads, killed his Gazanti, and kind of ignored his big ships to get a 7-4. And so that kind of ended the day. I think I ended up second or third on day 1. Is that right, Frizzmmm?
Let's see, third on day 1.
Yeah, so it was really up and down. It was a lot of me learning my list on the go, which again I don't recommend. But it really kind of opened my eyes to just how tough a Gates Liberty really is. And I really came to the conclusion that it's actually, at the end of the day, it's actually probably harder to kill an Agate Liberty than it is an Agate Starhawk, because the Liberty just can go away with speed 3 plus engine text. It just runs away. That the Starhawk just doesn't have that option. The Starhawk can sit there and tank a whole lot better than a Liberty can. But man, like when you're like, I need to get out of here and I want to be done, you can go away, and there's not a whole heck of a lot your opponent can do about it, even if they're really leaning into their red dice ships. So Fox, how did day 1 go for you?
Well, it was a struggle though. I was learning this fleet as well. So I'm taking Dooku, surprise. And this is a 3 activation heavy squad fleet. Really wanted to push the envelope and show people that that Separatist heavy squads is a viable archetype. And I guess we'll see how that turned out when we talk about day 2. But I had a Recusant support destroyer with Rune Hako, flight controllers, boosted comms, expanded hangar bay, linked turbo laser towers, and Patriot Fist. I had a Gazanti with tickies on them, and my Munificent that I've been flying for a while, the Star Frigate it's my flagship, so with Dooku, and it's got Watt thermals, point defense ion cannons, and linked turbo laser towers. And then my squad ball, I brought 4 aces. I filled out all my ace slots with DBS 404, DIS T81, DFS 311, and then Flak Afrock prototypes. So it sounds like I just said a bunch of crazy numbers and integers and stuff. I brought every DIS, DBS, DFS is all you really need to know. And then I brought in Flak. I had a generic Hyena, a generic Tri-Fighter, and I had 4 generic Vultures. I was right at 400 points. And so I gave up the bid that I usually have because in designing this fleet and in the practice games, I found that going first in some ways was as strong as going second in this fleet. That Recusant activation, if I can set it up right and lead into it, with Rune Hako giving me a lot of nav tokens and speed control on my end, and then me raiding nav on my opponent, I can really control when they float into my Patriot Fish shot, and then my squad alpha. So there's a lot of utility there, you know. Frizz, you got a question?
Yeah. It's not so much a question as, well, can you explain Dooku out there? Because we say Dooku, but how do you utilize him?
Oh my gosh, I get to go on my Dooku spiel.
Yeah.
Buckle up, guys. Here we go.
Here we go. So Dooku is used in 2 ways, really. In the strongest 2 ways. One is the round 1 navigate raid. If you are essentially, unless you have a highly efficient token economy, round 1 to get nav tokens everywhere, which there is no resupply for nav tokens. The only way to do it is with a single comms net. Very few fleets have 2 comms nets, or Hondo. And you have to be, if I'm second player, you would have to be pretty precognitive in that way to anticipate me doing a round 1 nav raid. But it forces, whatever speed you thought was safe for you, you're forced to stay at it. Like if you're at 2 and you front line deployed, like right at the front of your deployment zone, you're going speed 2, and you're gonna. And if I bump up to speed 3 on my Recusant, I can shoot you top of the next round. That's how the movements work. That's how the distances work out. It's really, really strong. At the top of round 2, I can usually. I did it game 2, day 2 with a Gazanti. It just popped off the board. There was really nothing that could have been done because it can't avoid that. And then the other way is objective abuse. My objectives are Ion Storm, abandoned mining facility, and infested fields. So I've talked about abandoned mining facility a lot. The first 2 rounds are the critical mining rounds, because after that, engagement is starting. And so I can raid repair the first 2 rounds. And yeah, you might have a parts resupply, and so you'll be able to get 30, 40 points, maybe, if you've got enough ships and you timed everything out right. Meanwhile, by the end of round 2, I'm going to have something like 110, 120 points in my 5 activation fleet. With this fleet, I found that I pretty much cap out at about 80 points, but a lot of the stress is in my opponent not knowing when to switch away from repair commands, if that makes sense. It gives me a ton of leverage tactically to get around their fleet while they're totally focused on just repair. Oh my God, I got a farm. He's getting so many tokens. I can go ahead and get 40, 50 points right off the bat with Wat Tambor. It's pretty ridiculous. And then Ion Storm, Infested Fields should be obvious. Like I'm already talking about raiding Nav. Infested Fields, I can just move obstacles in your way. That's pretty awful. But Ion Storm has become quickly my favorite red to take with Dooku because those raids stick. That token that you had to make sure that you could command squads next round. I'm going to Ion Storm and I'm going to take that token away. And now next round, I might as well have just sliced you, right? Like you're not going to be able to command the squads that you were planning on commanding. There's a lot of other subtleties to it. There's a lot of activation locking. Like if I raid Nav, it's a lot of people think that raid is weak. It is individually, like an individual ship that's raided. When it's fleet wide, things start happening. Like people get activation locked. This happened in our game, Kelorn. You got activation locked and a ship got out of position and it forced you to disengage in a way that you really didn't want to. At least that's what you told me. Like you wanted to turn in, but because the GR75 floated in a way in front of your Liberty and you had to pass a token, the activation lock occurred. And now it's like, well, the engagement as you had planned it doesn't really pan out. And that happens over and over and over again. It's really, really hard when you have a standard engagement plan and someone just throws one fleet-wide nav raid. Like things, your brain is already working on overload. It's really hard to catch back up to what's going on. You know what I mean?
The problem that you're referring to in our game really came down to one of, I was trying an unconventional deployment to counter Dooku and basically screwed myself at the deployment phase of where I chose to put the GR75. I was thinking that it would get out of the way and it just ended up in really bad spots repeatedly. And that had to do with, I was able to clear the raids on the ship that I wanted to, my Liberty, but I was unable to clear them as well on the GR75, and I put that in a bad initial spot and at a bad initial speed, and that's what really came down to, is it turned a deployment error into something that was not rectifiable in the game.
Exactly. Like there are ramifications rounds 2 and 3 in the deployment phase that like Dooku just forces, and it's really hard to move around it. I'm a big proponent of it. I've loved playing him. I've loved proving people wrong about him. Everyone says he's really weak, and I actually find that he's the 4D chess master in the game right now. So anyways, my games. So that was a long-winded explanation about Dooku. Here we go. Game 1, I played against Plo Koon, and it was an Acclimator and 2 Pelta archetype with Ahsoka, Anakin, and Axe, and a Y-Wing, and then 4 arcs. It's a really good squad ball, and Ahsoka moving around with the FCTs that he had was super annoying and super dangerous. Like my squads can't handle all these little plinks that he was able to do. And so I found when I was building out this fleet, these 2 ships, my Munificent and my Recusant, in a matchup where I find that my squads just are not going to live as long as I'd like them to, or I can't get too much of a tactical advantage, my ships can often punish yours more. And so if I can use my squads as like a defensive retrofit, almost like a super early warning system or something, I can get the edge. And that's exactly what happened in this game. He created a wall. I jumped over them and attacked Axe from the rear, from his axe hole. And that locked everybody down, and damage was damage. Like Axe wasn't mitigating any of it. It was just, you shoot me, I shoot you, and that's what's going to happen. And so I ended up killing Axe and 2 arcs and locking down Ahsoka and Anakin long enough, and his the Aaron, poor guy, he had like the wrong commands lined up on his acclimator every single round I raided, and so he really wasn't able to do any. Like he got overhyped, I feel like, or psyched out on the raid aspect of it, and so his acclimator did nothing but just float into close range of my recusant and then quickly blow up. The problem was, by doing that, he blocked my recusant escape pattern, and so I was forced to kind of move into the arc cloud, which got really hairy round 4, and he was able to take out my recusant right when Kellorn was asking about lunch, which was an emotionally distressing moment in my life. So
we did go to Whataburger and had good food, so we'll leave it at that.
We did, yeah. And then his because the recusant died, my Muni wasn't able to put enough damage into his flagship. Got away on 2 cards. It was brutal, or got away with 2 whole left. So I almost tabled that fleet. My next matchup was against a Negate Pickle with a Starhawk and 3 A-Wings. And it was really interesting. I don't have much to say about it other than he had advanced gunnery in his pile, and I chose advanced gunnery, and he put it on the pickle, and I just tore up the Starhawk. It's
sad.
Yeah, it was really sad for him. It was I don't know. The archetype is interesting. But my fleet is designed to do, like, if I can get double arcs, which I often do on both of my big ships, like, you're going to be eating 3 red and then 2 red, 2 blue from the Munificent, and then 3 red, 2 red, 1 black, 1 black, 1 black, 3 red, 2 blue, 3 red, 1 blue from the Recusant. There aren't many ships in the game that can stand that for 1 round, and the Starhawk definitely couldn't stand it 2 rounds. I positioned my recusant in a way where he felt like he needed to focus it down, but it was too far away and was obstructed by the advanced gunnery pickle. And by that time, the Munificent was right up in the Starhawk's face and had taken no shots. And so my Munificent can take some punishment, and it did. It took 2.5 rounds of shots before it went down. And at that point, it was what the Starhawk was worth. The Starhawk and his squads were worth way more than the Munificent and the few squads that he took out. And that was a good game. And then I played a different Ozzel fleet. Dude, Ozzel MSU came out, and they were really good fleets. Just letting everybody know, if you're thinking about Ozzel MSU, now's the time maybe, because nearly tabled Kellorn, and I was super impressed with the fleet I went up against. But he had 3 Architans, a Corvus Raider that was like naked, and a bunch of rogues. And he did an excellent job of splitting. He did an excellent job of splitting his Architans up so that my Recusant had to make a bad choice. And I moved away from my squads a little too far. I was able to kind of swing my butt out and get my boosted comms range on 4 vultures right at the end, and that was enough to just absolutely delete the rest of his rogues. He didn't kill any of my ships, and I sailed off into the sunset, and that qualified me. I think I was at 20 points. It wasn't a lot of points, but it was enough to qualify for day 2, and that was it. I think I was 5th place going into it, so yeah.
So how was day 1 from your perspective, Frizzmmm?
Day 1 from my perspective was just a lot of walking. Other than that, it ran straight as any other tournament does. The nice thing, it was 3 rounds, so 7 hours into the day, and we're pretty much wrapping up. I didn't see any real issues. I watched a couple of people miss pretty obvious calls. PDIC was the most often missed opportunity. Point defense ion cannons. And other than that, I I felt like I did nothing the whole day.
So, forgive me, I wasn't there, of course. Is there any like memorable moment, like that one that you just you think day one, and that's the first thing you think of?
For me, yeah, one of my long-term friends, the longest running friend that I have, Brian Ellis, is flying one of the Ozzel MSUs, the one with 7 activations. He nicknamed the
one
fleet
that almost tabled me.
Yeah, the one that almost tabled you. He calls it there can be only one, and that's because there's only one upgrade on each ship. And he has a habit of just a deadpan embellishment and overaction on the way he describes the situation. And for me, seeing him in action do that same sort of thing he did when we were playing Warhammer when I was 15 was what made the tournament for me.
Well, do we want to move on to the day 2 stuff here, Fox?
Well, yeah, let's do some wrap up. So conclusions. We had how many onagers total in the tournament, Ian? Or do you remember?
It was 4, I believe, right, Ian?
3 or 4, yes.
Yeah, and only one made it to the top 8. And then no Starhawks made it into the top. Well, there was
only one Starhawk in the whole the whole 20 field, right?
Yeah, and I killed it.
And it didn't have a gate on it, which goes back to my theory that Starhawks without a gate are just easy to kill.
Yeah,
yes,
no, that's true.
You didn't have to breathe in my ear when you said you killed it. I just want you to know that.
I did have to breathe into your ear. And we had a lot of there were several Onager plus Venator builds that I saw. Jason flying the Onager plus Kuat. So Imperials are trying to experiment with this long range plus close range combo. And I think it could work. I just think
there was a lot of MSU too. Like there was a lot more MSU than I expected.
And it was awesome. In fact, that Brad's Separatist MSU fleet made it to day 2, which was absolutely awesome. So, Juliet, what you got?
I chalk up the showing of MSUs to the wonderful Armada podcast and all of our wonderful interviewees. We're out here, so we see you making choices from our conversations. We see you.
But that's all I wanted to. I just wanted to capstone that and just talk about the big boogeymen in the meta right now, quote unquote, and how a lot of them they showed up. But I think a lot of list building right now, particularly in Texas, after Valadian's run last year, I think we're all just really aware of the dangers of not being ready for something like that. So.
Thank you for listening to the Armada Podcast. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. In the meantime, keep up with the show on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter at Armada Podcast. Join us on Discord with the link in the show notes. Until next time.